Good morning. Well, my topic this morning is the vital force. Now, I know what you're thinking. If this is a New Thought spiritual center, then why is he giving a talk on homeopathy? Well, you can relax because I'm not going to be giving a talk about homeopathy. I borrowed the title, The Vital Force, from a talk I heard Dr. Stuart Grayson give in New York City in 1990. Now, borrow, of course, is the term that we ministers use when we talk about when we steal from each other. We borrow this and we borrow that, and I borrowed. Well, think about it. I'm not giving the title back. Dr. Grayson made his transition, but even if he hadn't, I can't take the title and say, well, here it is, Dr. Grayson. I'm returning it to you now that I've used it. But that's where I got that title. But actually, I'm only borrowing the title of Dr. Grayson's talk. Because in this talk, which I listened to again when I was getting ready for today, he started talking about the anima and the animus, about Jungian psychology, Hindu religion, and all kinds of other things that present the vital force in quite a different way than I'm thinking about it this morning. And I remember when I first went to that, I did go to that meeting at Alice Tully Hall. I don't think I understood 5 words that the man said. And now I listen to it again, and I think I still don't understand 5 words of what the man said. But Dr. Grayson could be that way sometimes, but I love him anyway. And so the talk is about the vital force in quite a different sense. Now, when I started researching the topic, I found that I was also borrowing the term from homeopathy. I hadn't realized that. But one of the things I do when I use a term in a talk or as a talk title, even if it's maybe especially if it's something someone else has used, I look it up to see, well, maybe this means something that I'm not aware of. And maybe it means something that I'm not aware of that I really don't want to be using. But I looked this up and found that this was a term used in homeopathy. But it's okay because the way that they use it is actually closer to the idea of the vital force that I want to present this morning. As one article I read described it, all living things have an integrated force that maintains and directs life. This is true whether that living thing is human, plant, or animal. This force is a form of energy that underpins all biophysical and biochemical processes and separates living from non-living matter. Throughout history, this spark has had many names and been described in many ways. In the English-speaking world, it has been called the innate intelligence, life principle, life force, vitality, dynamis, regulatory force, or vital energy. Hahnemann, the founder of homeopathy, called it the vital force. So it's close, not exactly what I'm talking about, but close. Now this month's theme is vitality, and the dictionary defines vitality as 1, the state of being strong and active, energy, and 2, the power-giving continuance of life present in all living things. Now, the physical vitality suggested by the first definition is certainly important. But where does it come from? Where does it come from? That's what's really important. What is the source of this state of being strong and active? And we find that in the second part of the definition, the power-giving continuance of life present in all living things. That's what we're really talking about as this source of vitality, this source of life itself. And if we can identify this power that gives continuance of life and understand it, then we'll know how to use it and never lack for physical vitality, mental vitality, spiritual vitality, or any other type of vitality that we might want. See, the power-giving continuance of life, that's present in all living things is God. It's God, spirit, intelligence, life, whatever you want to call it. And if we can understand life and the way life works, we can ensure a continuous and infinite supply of whatever it is that we desire in life, be it vitality or anything else. Now, I've mentioned the term infinite, an infinite supply. And whenever you talk about infinite, it, on the one hand, introduces endless possibility. On the other hand, it also presents a lot of potential problems and difficulties. For example, do you realize that it's logically impossible for you to walk from where you're sitting to the entrance to the building or the exit to the building? It's logically impossible. Think about it. Well, to walk to that door, first you have to walk halfway. Okay, that's fine. But to get halfway, you have to walk half of that distance. But before you can get to that place, you have to walk half of that distance. But before you get there, you have to walk, half of that distance, and so on, and so on, and so on. Now, since the distance is infinitely divisible, you have an infinite number of things that you have to do, which is impossible. So you see, you really can't get there from here, and you might as well make yourself comfortable, because you're going to be here for a while. Now, that paradox was originally thought up by a Greek philosopher, an ancient Greek philosopher named Zeno. It's his dichotomy paradox, and he was really trying to prove that motion was impossible. There's a great story about that. It said he was once explaining this to a room full of philosophers, and so at one point one of them stood up, said, "Zeno, I refute you thus," and walked out of the room. So I think what we need to do is to try to understand life and the way life works a little bit better. Now, I'd like you to imagine for a moment that you're a powerful king or queen of a vast land. And you wake up one morning with amnesia, and you're oblivious to your position or your surroundings. You've forgotten your past and your present glory. The palace you're in looks like an ordinary house, and your scepter just looks like an ordinary staff. And so you go along like this, and one day you find yourself in the middle of a terrible problem, and you decide to go seek the aid of the ruler of your country to help you get out of the problem, but you can't find the ruler because you are the ruler. Now, actually, we really don't have to imagine this, because in a certain important sense, we're doing it all of the time, or much of the time anyway. See, we've somehow forgotten who and what we really are, and we go rushing around here and there looking for answers when the answers are already within us. We look everywhere else except within us where the answers really are. And this is because the divine is already within each one of us. And so everything we need for a greater expansion of life is already right here. And this is true because this power within us is that originating power that created everything out of itself. And so we express this and individualize it. Now, when we understand this, we can then understand who and what we really are, why life works the way it does, and how we can cooperate with it. And when we do that, we'll no longer be like the royal amnesiac. So how does this work? Well, there's a law of mind, and this law of mind operates as a law of cause and effect, and it's the law through which spirit is always giving to us. It is always giving to us, and this law of mind is the means by which it's doing this. See, we are individualized expressions of spirit. And because this is what we are, the same creative process takes place in our own personal worlds as takes place on a universal level. The same creative process going on in us all the time. And we have freedom to choose, and we can use that freedom to create good in our lives. But we sometimes choose poorly, and our negative thought and feeling produces a corresponding reaction from the law of mind, producing negative results. And whenever I use that example, I think of that scene from the Indiana Jones movie, The Grail, where the Grail Knight, the Nazi has chosen the wrong cup, and he turns into dust and blows away, and the Grail Knight says, he chose poorly. Well, sometimes we choose poorly, and the results might not be that dramatic and drastic, but they are not good results nonetheless, because the law is always corresponding to our thought, and if we give it this negative thought to correspond to, it's going to produce after its kind and produce something negative. This is why if you sometimes feel that your get up and go has got up and went, this is the reason why. You've entertained a pattern. The law of mind has corresponded to something in you that's drained out this energy. But for them to be of any use to us, we have to apply these ideas. And we apply them, I think, by doing 4 important things. One is using some form of affirmative prayer or affirmations, if that's how you prefer to work. There are all kinds of ways to do this to change our consciousness. And 2, we watch our point of attention and see where that's going. And 3, we watch our thought throughout the day. And finally, 4, we're ready for results. We become ready for results and recognize them when they happen and then accept them. See, our consciousness determines our experience. We're a mixture of subconscious mind patterns outpicturing as our experience, and this means that all thought is creative. I'd like you to sit and think about, isn't that funny? Sit and think about this fact that all thought is creative. But no, I would like you to think about that for a moment. All thought is creative. Not just the happy thoughts, not just the thoughts we're doing during our spiritual work, but all thought is creative because there is this law of mind that is responding by corresponding to every thought that we have. And so, recognizing this, we use some form of affirmative prayer or affirmation to change our consciousness, which means we replace old subconscious thought patterns with new ones. Well, next we watch our point of attention. And our point of attention is what we're thinking about. It's what we're interested in. At any particular time, it's centered on the positive or the negative. And it's always moving. It's always moving around. It's always going somewhere. It's either moving in a positive direction or a negative one. And where it's moving is very important to us. And it's important because where our point of attention goes, our thought and feeling follow. Our mind follows. Where our point of attention, our minds, which are our thought and feeling, follow. And it's this thought and feeling that's going to determine our experience. So we want to see where our point of attention is and whether it's someplace we want it to be. Well, next we watch our thought, keeping it the way we want it to be. And we do this, of course, because all thought is creative. And we watch our thoughts so that the thoughts we're thinking all day long don't contradict and neutralize whatever it is that we're working on, whatever it is that we want, whatever it is that we've affirmed or prayed about. We don't want to start thinking of the opposite and have the law of mind start creating that. So if you pray for, well, let's say vitality, if you pray for vitality in the morning and then throughout the day think to yourself, man, I'm tired, then you're asking for trouble. Because throughout the day, this is your thought. This is what you're convincing yourself. Oh, man, I'm tired. The things we say to ourselves. Well, the law is responding to that too. The law is responding to that thought also. Now, finally, we have to be ready for the results. Ask ourselves if we're acting in ways that show we're ready for it to happen. So what does this look like? Well, one time there was a town, and they had a very long drought. And it went on for months and months and months and months. No rain, everything dry. It was a terrible drought. So the town decided they were going to have a town meeting. Everybody was going to get together and pray for rain. So they all got together for the meeting. They started to pray for rain, but don't you know that only one little girl brought an umbrella? She was the one with faith. She was the one who was acting as if she really believed this thing was going to work. Well, being ready creates an attitude of expectancy in us. Well, these are the basics of life and the way life works. Now, Dr. Ernest Holmes, who developed the science of mind, spiritual philosophy, used the term it as a synonym for God. Now, this shocked a lot of people. They said, how could you call God it? But actually, it's a very good term for God, probably one of the only appropriate ones, because it really expresses the idea of what this principle is, which you don't get if you say he or she or something like that. Well, he used the term it as a synonym for God to bring out the fact that whatever the nature of God is, it has to be impersonal. And being impersonal, it must, by its nature, give of itself to all. See, there's only an impersonal givingness from which we draw according to our ability to do so. This power is available to everyone, and it responds by corresponding to our thought. Now, our application of this is the most important factor in our experience and in creating our experience. We could ignore it, use it as a hobby, or just some place to go on a Sunday morning. But to really benefit from it, we have to study it, spend some time with it, and then practice it. Because the essence of new thought, in whatever flavor we may find it, is changing the individual's thought. See, we individualize God. What more could we possibly ask for? And we use this great fact about ourselves through our thought. So this means that we are life and we are mind. We're always creating. This is what we are and this is what we do. And so ends the lesson.